Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of In Her Shoes. Today, we're talking all about the worshiped woman. We're talking all about love, relationships, and I'm so excited to bring on Kristen. She is here. I'm so excited. Let me bring her on. Let's see here. Kelly!
Hi,
Hi, beautiful. How are you?
I'm so good. How are you doing?
Good. I dressed the sexy top because I know we're going to talk about sexy things. So, okay, my love. So, welcome. This is Kelly Christian, and I'm so excited to have you. You are just so powerful. You're teaching women how to become and how to really unleash the worshiped woman within themselves.
Yes.
And I want to dive into love and relationships and all of the things because we've been following each other for a while, and we were in clubhouse rooms and just going back and forth and
Yeah.
talking. And I love your work. I think it's so powerful and so needed. So yeah, please introduce yourself and then we'll dive right in.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Thanks, everyone, for joining. My name is Kelly Kristen. I am a life and love coach. I really, oh, there's a Kristen Kelly here. That's so cute. I love that. Yay. Okay. That's amazing. Yes, that's really my name. Okay. So, I really focus on helping women heal from toxic relationships and coming out of toxic relationships and not only healing, but becoming such an empowered version of themselves that they learn how to self worship. And I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit more about exactly what that means. But my vision of the worshiped woman is literally creating a world where women love themselves so much that they see themselves like as a goddess, that they see themselves in the eyes of a divine being. And then how do they treat themselves when they see themselves that way? And then in turn, how do they show up in the world? And when they show up in the world as their own version of whatever that means to them, and that's what I call the worshiped woman. When they show up in the world that way, it creates a ripple effect for everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that energy is so powerful. So it's really about teaching women to heal the wounds of the past, to release all of those like toxic relationship patterns and codependency and all the stuff that just really doesn't serve us, and stepping into their power, into their sovereignty, but doing it in a really feminine way as well.
I love that. So I know for me, I'll speak for me, I've definitely been in past relationships where I had the codependency, the narcissistic partners, and all of the things. And so I would love for you to talk about that. Like how do we get into those relationships? How do we get out? I mean, I know it's self-worth converse. It's so there's so many layers to it. So I would love for you to share like even also how you got into this work. Like was it a version of you, or were you seeing just so many women that you're like, I can help them? So yeah, if you can just elaborate on that.
Yeah, I definitely coach what I needed to work through myself. And I think that's what makes what I do so effective is because I've been there. I was in a very toxic, abusive relationship for many, many years with somebody who was a narcissist, but also many different layers of abuse going on. And it was coming out of that where I really started my journey of healing and self-development and all the beautiful things going on. And I really didn't want to work in the relationship space. I didn't want to work in toxic relationships. I was like, yeah, that's something that happened in my life, but I'm kind of past it, and I didn't really feel like it was going to be the focus of my work. But over time, I realized no matter what I was working on my clients with, it's like they all had this in their past. And, I would talk to women everywhere, and it's like, even if I shared a little bit of my story, it was like there was so much of the Me Too. And I just felt like there's it's 1 in 4 women, right? 1 in 4 women. So that's like your sister, your mom, like your friend, like 1 in 4 women are going to be abused at some point in their life. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a lot. That's a lot. And I think that not enough people really talk about it. Not enough people really bring it to the forefront and say like, hey, this is what I went through. And so instead we have this whole society that tries to just pretend like we didn't go through this horrific thing, and we'll just be okay, and we'll just try to move on and try to get into functional relationships and then wonder why we have all of these problems.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it really felt like it was you know, the universe guiding me into like, no, Kelly, like, I know you don't really want to right now, but just do this and see what happens. And I have to say, it's been the most fulfilling work of my life, getting to do what I do now, which is like really specifically help women come out of these toxic relationships and really turn their whole lives around. It's just, and it's mind blowing to me because it's like, if you don't really know what you're doing in that space, it can take a really long time for women to feel like themselves again, for women to feel like, oh, I do have my power back. I do feel like I'm worthy. I do feel like I can step into this, right? And it takes a very specific mixture of, you know, the right mindset stuff, the right embodiment work, the nervous system regulation, like all of these things together. And I really feel, you know, learning from another woman who's not just telling you these things, but has been there, to be able to come out of that. And I'm not really remembering what the question was.
Yeah,
No,
let's dive
on and on about it.
Yeah, no, this is great. So I'm hearing like, yeah, it's like the unlearning, the repattering, the nervous system. It's all of that, because when we're talking about being in like the toxic relationships, whatever that is, right? Spiritual, mental, emotional, physical.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It
That's a
is.
lot of layers. How do you work with women? Like, is it, and can you talk about like even the nervous system regulation, or just kind of your body of work? Like, how do you work with women specifically, and what are you identifying? Like, is it the worthiness, like, you know, unleashing that, and or having them remember that?
Yes. And I love that you said remember, because I definitely come from a place of, you know, we're born worthy, right? Every single baby comes into this world. And I often say this, like, think about a baby, think about a child being born. It instantly, anybody who sees a child being born is like, oh my God, this baby, you just want to love it. You know, you want to make sure it's fed. You want to make sure it has everything that it needs. And that's our natural state. That's how we come into the world. And it's really just all of these experiences and other things that happen that allow us to forget that, and we make meanings out of all kinds of things and form all of these beliefs, and all this stuff ends up happening to where we really lose sight of that. And I often say, like, high self-worth is the antidote to toxic relationships. Like, if you were never going to do anything else but you just focused on your self-worth and having a really high self-worth, then I think that that's really an important place to start. So for me, that's a big focus, is increasing your self-worth, increasing your self-esteem. And oftentimes that does, you know, have to deal with like going back into childhood. You know, we form our baseline. I call this our subconscious blueprint that we form, you know, about up until about 8 years old. Our brains are really wide open, and we're just like these little sponges soaking in all the information around us. So we witness relationships, we get treated a certain way, and that's what our system, not just our mind and our beliefs, but like our internal hormones, our nervous system, like all of these things really get programmed in this way that say, this is what love is. So now I go out into the world and I feel like, okay, I want to experience love, and I say I want to experience love. That's really great and feels really safe and cozy and all these things. But I came from a pretty chaotic childhood. Well, if I get into a relationship that feels safe and good, I'm going to be like, this guy's really boring. I don't, you know, I don't feel a spark with him. And then I'm going to end up with somebody who's probably similar, emotionally chaotic, like the upbringing that I had. And I'm going to be like, well, you know, there's just something about him. There's something about him. I don't know what it is. We just connect. And I was like, yeah, your subconscious is like, oh, I know what's going to happen here. It's going to be a total mess. Yeah. But that feels good. So until we go back to our subconscious and really do the work to release, like we have to release not only in the mind, the beliefs that we picked up, right? We have to release the idea of being unlovable, the idea of being unwanted. So common. The idea of not being enough, so common. Like, these are things that I think every human struggles with on some level. We just don't talk about it. We don't really want to bring it up. But like, at the end of the day, if you're with people that do not respect you, if you're with people that make you feel small, if you're with people where you feel like you have to prove to them like over and over again how worthy you are and how they should love you, then it's like indicating that you have some really things within yourself that say, I'm not lovable, I'm not wanted, I'm not enough. And your subconscious is actually looking for proof, right? Like, our beliefs show up in our reality. So whatever it is that you have going on in your relationship reality is really a reflection of yourself, of what you believe about yourself. So we really have to start and go back, releasing those things. And then also this is the nervous system piece, and I think that this is one of the most important things and so often missed, is we have to learn how to regulate. Okay. So if you were somebody who came from this emotional, chaotic sort of background, or you had any form of abuse in your childhood, you had a parent that was an addict of any kind, an alcoholic, anything like that, you had a lot of emotional ups and downs, highs and lows, or if you had a family that there was just, a lot of stress where like it seemed like there was always something going on, or you guys had to like come together to like overcome something all of the time, that really gets lodged into your nervous system. And when you don't have people, unfortunately our parents were, not raised in a way where they were super progressive.
Mm-hmm.
And, oftentimes, unless we had really progressive parents that totally understood emotional regulation, then we end up in a place where we're dysregulated. We can't handle our own emotions. So we shove them down. And as we shove them down, our nervous system gets like filled up, filled up, filled up. And, I use like a cup analogy a lot, where it's like we have all this stuff we haven't dealt with, and then a little something gets poured in and it just overflows. And I'm gonna move with you because I think there's like some crazy stuff going outside my window right now. So we're just gonna travel and talk. But that's what happens. So we have like this overwhelmed nervous system because of all of these things that we've been through that we've never dealt with. And as it relates to relationships, we get in relationships, we don't know how to regulate ourselves. There's a lot of trauma in toxic relationships because you're just generally not safe. There's this underlying perception of danger all of the time. So how do we deal with that? Like, how do we come out of that? And that's really why I teach a lot of emotional regulation, a lot of like, well, actually, how do I feel into this emotion? How do I stop these coping mechanisms that I've been doing? Like, how do I stop the partying or the overworking or the overdoing this or the nonstop social media? How do I stop that and actually just feel what my body's wanting me to feel? Because that really allows us to expand, and that allows us, that expansion in itself, like, would be making the cup bigger. Once we make the cup bigger, well, we have more room. And then we have more room, some of that stuff that's been at the bottom, well, maybe that can come up. And maybe because we're learning how to feel, we can just feel that and let it go. And that's really a big part of the process, is like processing those things that we have just shoved down, that we have said, like, I don't want to deal with this now. I've got to just keep moving through. I've got to go do all of these things, or whatever it is that we tell ourselves. When in reality, it's like, if we want to heal, we got to feel, right?
Yes.
We have to feel those things. We have to feel all the stuff that we don't want to feel. We have to really admit what we've been through. And that's another thing coming out of toxic relationships, where it's really hard to like get a grip on reality of like what actually just happened.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to face that, because oftentimes we're carrying a lot of shame from that. So we really, really have to learn how to sit with those uncomfortable emotions and allow them to be there. And once we learn, I'm allowed to feel this and I feel it fully, it goes away. Right. But we're oftentimes so afraid, and we don't realize that that's what's going on. So we live our lives in like this perpetual, state of survival, instead of really coming to a place of peace and joy, which is where I think, we would all be better off living.
Yeah. And I love that you said, like, so many people are so afraid of feeling. And that is like the key to like healing. You said it. You absolutely said it. And because some of this is uncomfortable, right? It's like the shadow work.
Yes. And, and I think especially with toxic relationships, there's a lot of shame. And shame is literally one of the most uncomfortable feelings to feel. And really the feeling that's associated with like toxic shame that we get is disgust. And if you think about that, like feeling that you literally feel that you feel disgusting, that is so painful. It's so painful, but it's one of the most transformative things ever. Because if you feel that and you like literally let that dislodge from your body, and you open up to something new, open up to the new truth, which is like, no, actually, I'm pretty fucking amazing. Actually, I'm worthy. Actually, I am enough. And you open up to that, then you're really creating a whole new world. And so like, I say sometimes I live in this space of like, where therapy oftentimes is like just going into the back and just going into the back and figuring out, like, that's great. But we also need tools of like how to shift those things. And, clients come to me a lot of times where they're like, I've been doing the counseling, but like, 3 weeks into your program, I've gotten more out of it than years of counseling. Why? Because I don't just give you information, but we actually need to process that information and change the beliefs and do the work in our minds and our bodies to be able to shift out of it. And I think that that's so important, because if we just get stuck in a place where we're like releasing and we're finding out all of this about our stuff, like, awareness is great and certainly important, but what do you do with that awareness? And if you're not really then taking that awareness and saying, oh, this is what it's been, because I think there's this idea of like, oh, I had a fucked up childhood, like, I'm doomed in relationships. Not true, but you do have to do the work to like really become aware of those patterns, release them, and reprogram your mind and your body to be able to live in a new way. And that's the key, where you're actually doing the reprogramming work. And I call this like the rapid transformation process, where it's like releasing the past, reconnecting to what's actually true, and then reprogramming your mind and body to be able to live in that truth.
Mm-hmm. I love that, because you're not just like putting an affirmation or doing like positive things over the shit.
Yeah.
Where a lot of people are like, just, say, positive affirmations in the mirror. Yes. And right. Like you said, it's deeper, because it is in our bodies. Like, it is consciously programmed and subconsciously programmed. And it's like, I love that you're saying your work is like getting deeper into the root, right? Like of healing it, feeling it, like letting it rise and come up to the top. And then, right, putting that, all the other things that people were talking about. And that's why I think it's missed a lot, right? Like, just say an affirmation and like, it'll be good, and think positively.
And you know what? I say that all the time. I'm like, how are your affirmations working out for you? Because and the thing is that I tried that. And like, the reason that I do the deep work that I do is because I tried all of that. I was like, when I left that relationship, and I became very sick. I had 2 autoimmune disorders. I had like anxiety so bad. My hands were shaking. Like, I was an absolute wreck. And going to like Western medicine route, they did, test all your hormones, do all this stuff. And they tell me I have to be on like 6 medications and I'm never going to be better. And in my heart, I knew, and I have a background in medicine. I actually was a psychiatric nurse. And I left that because I did not want to live my life like handing pills to people and thinking that made them better. So I really sat there and I was like, listen, I know I've been through a lot of stuff, even though I was trying to pretend like everything was fine and I was going to be okay. I knew I had been through so much. I was like, there's something deeper here. And that's really where I started, was like for my own health issues, because my body was just in a state of just total disarray, total dysregulation. And that's why we get physically sick. We get things like depression and things like autoimmune disorders and fibromyalgia and these things that they say have no cause or no cure. Like, no, there is a cause and there is a cure too, but it's really having to do that deep work of the nervous system repair. And I think that's what's so often missed. And it's why I think it's so important. And Coco Kelly says, I hope this will be recorded.
Yes, it will be. I know you're like dropping the nuggets and the wisdom. It's so good, Kelly. Like, so what would you say? And I mean, women definitely need to go into your program and do the work. Is there anything that, and I know it's not like, your work is not like quick tips or anything like that, but how do people start this process, right? If they are in like an abusive relationship, mentally, emotionally, or maybe they feel like they're dating a narcissistic, person. I mean, I know there's so many different protocols and codependency and all of that, but how does one like at least start the journey or the process, would you say?
Yeah. So I'd say there's 2 things here, because there's the people that are still in the relationship, and then there's people that have just come out, right? And are kind of like, what just happened? Because there is that feeling of like, what just happened in my life, right? Mm-hmm. If you're still in the relationship, it's really, you can still start your healing work, or really, I just think self-awareness work at that point, because you're not going to heal if you're still in a toxic relationship, because you cannot heal if your nervous system isn't safe. And that's just the truth. And so that's a choice that you can make in your life if you're going to spend your life like that or not. Okay. But you can start the self-awareness work. And the self-awareness work is really starting to understand like why you found yourself in this. What about this is appealing to you? What about this feels safe and comfortable and good for you? And really just taking an honest look at yourself and a really honest look at the relationship too. You know, when we're in these toxic cycles, there's a lot of different things that are going on hormonally and that make us feel like, oh, it might not be that bad, even though it's horrible. And that's our brain's way of protecting us. So if that is anybody listening here and you are like in a situation, you're like, oh, I don't quite know how to get out of this. I have 2 videos on my YouTube channel that I want you to watch. One is like, why is it so hard to leave a toxic relationship? That's all about trauma bonds. And then I have another that's called cognitive dissonance. Is this keeping me stuck? And those are 2 things that I really, really like to hit on because it's like that feeling of like, this person just has a pull over me and I don't know why, and I have to be with this person. Like that's really a trauma bond. Like you are not in love, you are in a trauma bond. And the more you can really learn that and just have some awareness around that, then we can like loosen that up a little bit. You know, we can sort of just start to, once you can see what's going on and really have a grip on the reality of that situation, it's a lot easier to leave the situation. But other than that, you really just want to start working on like believing what you are worth, deciding what you are worth, right? So you want to look at, what is it that I actually want? What do I want? You know, oftentimes we get stuck in relationships and we get this feeling like, well, this is just the way it is. This is how my life is. This is what it is. And that comes for a couple of reasons. One is like our nervous system literally goes into a shutdown. So it's like, you know, sort of like this, I just give up kind of thing. But, you know, it really is like, can you expand your mind a little bit? Can you start believing like life could be better for me? And that's how I started my journey out of my relationship, is that I started learning just little things like, oh, you get what you think about the most, or like, you know, these little sort of self-development things, and just kind of starting there and allowing myself to expand and believe like, hey, maybe something can be different for me. Maybe I can have a different life. Like, why is my life like this? You know, so I think if you can just get yourself on board with like the possibility that, hey, what is it that I really want in a relationship? And is this it? And if that's not it, well, can I get myself to a point where I believe that something else is possible for me? And really, really starting there.
I love that. And that's like, so the 2 videos on your YouTube channel. Yeah. And I love that you said like, these are just loaded questions. Like, what do you want? Like when you ask, people are like it's such a loaded question, and you can sit with it because, and sometimes it changes too, like as you start to learn about yourself, right? Like, but people I think can't even answer that question to a whole nother level.
Right.
So you're going to say something, so apologize if I interrupted you.
No?
Okay.
I don't remember. I talk so much. I'm just like, blah, blah, blah.
It's so good. I'm like trauma bonding. Like, I'm like, yes, girl. Yes. Oh my gosh. So many times I've trauma bond. It's like, it's incredible. So those are good first steps. So really like, what do you want? How do you want to feel? Right. All of those things. And just being aware, right? And if you are still in a situation, that's huge.
Yeah, it's really just about bringing the self-awareness. And then it's like, okay, you know, increasing your self-worth. Well, if you're still in that relationship, increase your self-worth. You know, I have a program that's called the Worthy Woman Workshop. It's literally a 3-day program that will take you through a subconscious reprogramming of your self-worth. And it's incredibly powerful, and it's super low cost. And if anybody wants that or needs that, you can just send me a DM. But even starting with something like that, because it's not the affirmation, right? It's not like looking at yourself in the mirror and going, I am worthy, I am worthy, I am worthy 100 times over and expecting that that's going to work. It's actually going to take you through the subconscious release and the reprogramming so that your mind can actually get on board with the idea of like, yes, I am worthy. Yes, I am worthy. And then if you really start to step into that, you actually change, you know, energetically what you're vibrating. And then you'll be in this relationship and start to just feel like, wow, I can't be in this relationship anymore. right? And then once that happens, and we can actually do the healing work that's beyond that, which is really all the other stuff that I was talking about and the embodiment and everything like that. But if you're still in the situation, it's just hard to get there because you don't have the space for your nervous system to heal and to expand.
I love that. So you have the free videos on your YouTube, this program, right? That's low cost. And then don't you have another program where you run like longer, right?
Yeah, and I have an in-depth group program that is very much about everything that I've talked about. It's very much about doing a lot of the reprogramming and release, but also the body work, because the body work is truly what is going to change your whole life, really, because it's not just relationships too. Like when we carry these wounds of not feeling like we're not enough, or, you know, not feeling lovable, it shows up in all of our relationships, our friendships, like, you know, our family relationships, everything, how we show up at work, like, or in our businesses or whatever. It's everywhere, right? Because it's in our subconscious. So by you working on these things and really doing that healing work, it really does change your whole life, because you can go from this person who is like on edge or feels like, you know, has this underlying tension all of the time, to being somebody that can deeply experience peace and joy and pleasure. And how amazing is that? Right? And that, you know, that's how we give ourselves space to, like, okay, once I realize I can regulate and I can do these things, well, now I have the space to like make really good decisions for myself. You know, and I have the space to really take care of myself and become that worshipped woman, where I'm taking care of myself, where I'm putting myself first, where I'm putting myself up on this pedestal. You know, that comes with time. You're not going to like leave a bad relationship and the next day feel like you can worship yourself.
Right. Yeah. Right. It takes the work. This is why, like, I'm like, Kelly, you have to come on, because you're doing such powerful, deep work. Like, it's not just, and it's fine with like the surface work. It's, you know, it's fine. Like, meet everyone where they are. And it's like, there's so much more deep healing. Like, I'm going to get your course, because I'm like, this sounds amazing. I need it. Right. Like, so, you know, I'm single and I'm dating, and I think it's also like, we can always like be better, you know, we can always be better, but like remembering that, right? Because I know, and I don't know if you see it, I see it a lot, like in my coaching practice, like women, they don't ask enough, and also the receiving on all different, like even receiving a compliment, or just the receiving, and there's something there too, right?
100%. 100%. And it's funny because at like the end of all of my longer programs, I have like a closing ritual. And part of that is having the other woman reflect to, like, we'll have one woman in focus, and every woman in the group reflects on how she affected them the whole time, and like the beautiful things that they picked up about her that she didn't even know. And it's twofold. One is because, you know, I just want her to like realize the effect that her healing has, right? Because every time that we heal as a woman, we just have such a ripple effect out into the world. And it's so beautiful. But the second part is like, I just want you to learn how to receive and to like just be totally loved on, and how that feels in a really genuine way. Like, not like in a narcissistic love bombing, I'm trying to manipulate you way, but it's genuine, like, hey, I love you. This is what I see about you. And it's the most beautiful thing, because I mean, everybody cries, including me. I'm like a blubbery mess the whole time. I'm like, I love all of you. But it's just so beautiful to witness, because it's like the first time, and I purposely say, like, you're not allowed to say anything. You can't say thank you. You can't say, oh no, like, you cannot say a word. You just sit there. And it's so hard to do that. It's so hard, but it's such a beautiful process, because you just get to accept, like, and feeling that. But that's also like, we need to learn how to hold that and not reflect that. And I also think there's just so much conditioning around that. One is like, you know, we get conditioning around, oh, if somebody gives you a compliment, like, give them one back. Or, you know, if somebody gives you a compliment, say this or say that. No, that's not true. Like, give a compliment back if you want to give a compliment back, or you can just say thank you, or you can say nothing at all. And I think a lot of it is dropping the conditioning around all of that that's just given to us that isn't ours.
Yeah.
And so much of that just comes from self-awareness too. Is like once you get really aware of like what's actually mine, what's not mine, and really doing that, you can start showing up more in an authentic way.
Mm-hmm. So good and so important. Like with the receiving, like can you just? And I did an exercise like this, and it was so uncomfortable for me to just like receive all the love. And it's so interesting to like how much can you expand and receive it, because it's that capacity thing too. Like
Yeah.
is like receiving even more like love and affection. So I love that. Any kind of like final last words or anything you want to leave everyone with?
Yeah, the truth is always that you are worthy, you are deserving, you are enough. That is 100% true all of the time. The issue is only in your remembering of that. And when you work to remember that, and you have to keep remembering it over and over and over again, but when you really remember that and live in that, that's when your whole life changes. And if you are in positions in your life where it doesn't make you feel worthy, it doesn't make you feel deserving, it doesn't make you feel enough, that's where you have the work to do.
Beautiful. So people can find you obviously on your Instagram, and then free videos on your YouTube. What's your YouTube channel? Tell us all the
Kristen. I also have the Worshipped Woman podcast, which is probably, if you like to just, hear me talk and go rant off on these kind of conversations, but a whole bunch of different stuff from femininity to spirituality to all the things, the podcast is definitely the place. So that's the Worshipped Woman, and it can be found on Apple, Spotify, Alexa, all the places.
And then you have a mini course and a course. Tell us about that.
Yeah.
Tell us all the things, girl. I'm just saying, all the things.
Yeah. So if you're just kind of sort of starting your journey and you want to start somewhere and you want to have something that's super impactful, but not a really big, long thing to do, definitely start with the Worthy Woman Workshop. It's 3 days, subconscious reprogramming, all about increasing your self-worth. And it's very powerful. You can just send me a DM if you want the link to that. If you're a woman that's come out of a toxic relationship and you're like, okay, I really want to reclaim my power. I want to learn how to be in healthy relationships. I want to change the whole trajectory of that. Then you can message me about my program called Heal, Rise, Thrive. I'll get you all the info for that and when another round is starting. But that is an intimate group program. It's a 9-week program, so a lot more in depth, and it's my favorite thing to do. It's incredible.
You are incredible, and you are doing such powerful work.
Thank you. So are you.
Thank you, my love. And it's just healing, right? It's just the remembrance, and you're taking women through this journey. And I just love like the whole name of like the Worshipped Woman, because that's who every woman is. And you're just helping just remember, and we need to be reminded and reminded of our greatness. So I just want to thank you for the work and your energy and just your whole being, like,
oh, thank you,
full of light. Yeah. And I'm just so thankful for your time and your energy. And then people can watch the replay, and we want to hear like what's your biggest takeaway.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and get into this woman's world, get into her vortex, her energy field. I mean, I'm gonna rewatch this again just to get your healing, because you dropped some really amazing nuggets and wisdom, and I just want to say thank you so much. So powerful.
Thank you. I appreciate you so much. Thanks for having me.
All right, and we'll talk soon.
Okay.
So, all right, bye everyone.